The Snow Queen in 7 Stories by Hans Christian Andersen. We begin with the first story, which treats of the mirror and fragments. Look you, now we're going to begin. When we are at the end of the story, we shall know more than we do now, for he was a bad goblin. He was one of the very worst, for he was a demon. One day, he was in very good spirits, for he had made a mirror which had this peculiarity, that everything good and beautiful that was reflected in it shrank together to almost nothing, but that whatever was worthless and looked ugly became prominent and looked worse than ever. The most lovely landscapes seen in this mirror looked like boiled spinach, and the best people became hideous, or stood on their heads and had no bodies. Their faces were so distorted as to be unrecognizable, and a single freckle was shown to spread out over nose and mouth. That was very amusing, the demon said. When a good and pious thought passed through any person's mind, these were again shown in the mirror, so that the demon chuckled at his artistic invention. Those who visited the goblin school, for he kept a goblin school, declared everywhere that a wonder had been wrought, for now, they asserted, one could see for the first time how the world and the people in it really looked. Now they wanted to fly up to heaven, to sneer and scoff at the angels themselves. The higher they flew with the mirror, the more of it grinned. They could scarcely hold it fast. They flew higher and higher, and the mirror trembled so terribly amid its grinning that it fell down out of their hands to the earth, where it was shattered into 100 million and more fragments. And now this mirror occasioned much more unhappiness than before, for some of the fragments were scarcely so large as a barleycorn, and these flew about in the world, and whenever they flew into anyone's eyes, they stuck there, and those people saw everything wrongly, or they only had eyes for the bad side of things, for every little fragment of the mirror had retained the same power which the whole glass possessed. A few persons even got a fragment of the mirror into their hearts, and that was terrible indeed, for such a heart became a block of ice. A few fragments of the mirror were so large that they were used as window panes, but it was a bad thing to look at one's friends through these panes. Other pieces were made into spectacles, and then it went badly when people put on these spectacles to see rightly and to be just. And then the demon laughed till his paunch shook, for it tickled him so. But without some little fragments of glass still floated about in the air. And now we shall hear the second story. Thus ends the first story of The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen.